Is he simply pursuing a plan to help people, or could there be another explanation?
These videos continue to blow up, gaining millions of views and boosting Russell's presence as a political commentator. From here, Russell would make videos on the vaccine makers' role in the opioid.
Yeah, because these things are again, they're internet gold. Like, the internet loves this kind of shit. Like Jimmy Dore, look no further than him. He realized there was a gold mine to be had. That's why his channel changed from being just purely anti-democratic, content to being very, very anti-vax light content. And like, that's, just look at his videos. Look at the majority of them. What is the topic? Let's learn about Russell's Brand.
He's a British actor, a comedian, and an author. Please welcome Russell Brand.
Russell, you're awesome, man.
He's a very funny, talented guy.
Very good to see you again, Russell.
He's a talented guy, but he turned angry at some point. At some point, some switch flipped in his mind.
He used to be so funny, and now he's just an ass.
I only knew he was like a drug addict, sex addict loser.
A left-wing commie scum named Russell Brand. Russell Brand, a D-list actor, better known for his failed marriage to Katy Perry. He cooks meth and sleeps in his car.
Why is this person brought before a select committee? He simply isn't capable of doing it.
Hello.
Hello.
If I told you 10 years ago that this guy right here would be the biggest political commentator on YouTube, you'd probably laugh in my face. Back then, Russell Brand was a movie star, husband of Katy Perry, and a recovering heroin addict, famous for his eccentric behaviour.
Now you're a sex addict, is that right?
I don't know if it's right, but it's fun.
His over-the-top confidence.
Well, no.
Work more quietly!
And his rampant promiscuity.
Well, it's been really a wonderful experience. Like this.
Holy shit, Russell.
Russell, how can I do your bra just like this?
But today, Russell Brand is a family man, truth seeker, and owner of one of the fastest growing political channels on YouTube. With Russell's YouTube growth outcompeting media companies like MSNBC and Fox Media. But how could Russell Brand possibly get to this point? Why did Russell give up the fame, fortune, and Hollywood spotlight to talk about the deep state, lab leaks, vaccine passports, and the Great Reset?
Where you have no power or influence over your own life.
What caused this transformation? It's safe to say that over his life, Russell Brand has certainly gained some valuable insights along the way. Join me as we cover the incredible story of Russell Brand. Our story begins in Essex, early 1990s. The name Russell Brand is far from famous at this point in time. In fact, 16-year-old Russell Brand's life was in a downward spiral. Following a number of school expulsions, sexual abuse from his neighbour, and falling into bulimic eating patterns, things really weren't looking good.
What naughty things would Russell do then?
Just regular naughty stuff like smashing windows, starting fires over the allotments, bunking off school, shoplifting.
Added to the mix was Russell's chaotic family life, his mother suffering from cancer, his father running away, and his stepdad being an all-round abusive man would leave Russell a lonely child.
I was an insecure little fella.
Oh, people are like, oh wait, who makes this video? Is this video going to be an endorsement of Russell Brand's current political trajectory? Maybe. I don't know. I have no idea. It's just the political evolution, the radical overhaul of Russell Brand. Even if it is, don't worry. We can navigate it. I trust us. We have good compasses,
Russell would later claim that his personality was defined by this period of solitude, admitting he never really fitted in as a child. There was really only two things that mattered for Russell: his desire for fame,
And I thought that if I didn't become famous, there was no way that I was going to feel any sense of connection or happiness. I was a nervous little lad.
and his desire for drugs.
I was also studiously and diligently becoming a drug addict. It took quite a lot of commitment. It was quite time consuming. And ultimately, these two drives, the drives to entertain and the drives to numb pain, competed in my little biographical journey.
However, Brand was eventually accepted into the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, a prestigious acting school in London. Or so it seemed. By the time Russell joined this acting academy, Russell was already a heroin addict. Although in the public eye, Russell was doing extremely well, and by the age of 17, he began working on the British TV show, The Bill.
What do you mean, you know? That it's not true. I've got nothing to be afraid of talking to you.
You mean you're afraid of someone else?
However, this acting success was short-lived. Unlike Russell's drug problem, it was becoming more and more obvious that Russell could no longer hide his heroin use. When it became apparent that his drug abuse was getting in the way of his acting, he was expelled in his first year of acting school.
And then his final year was kicked out for the second time.
He was asked to leave because it wasn't working. And it was really upsetting because it crushed him.
With only a few acting gigs on the side and an all-consuming drug habit, Russell was losing hope. And so as a final lifeline, Russell would turn to heroin and crack for support.
You were addicted literally to everything.
Yes, I became addicted to heroin, crack cocaine, cocaine without the washing it up to make it into crack, amphetamines, marijuana, alcohol.
Brand had gone from attending one of the top acting schools in the UK to living life in the underworld, scoring heroin and crack from the ghettos of London. He had hit rock bottom. No future, a severed relationship with his family, and completely broke. It didn't look like fame was coming anytime soon.
The last 3 years, though, with the crack and the heroin were probably the worst. It involved the most times getting arrested, the most time physical injury.
It would take 7 drug-fueled years, full of arrests and close calls with death before things would ever change.
Being afraid of the fact that you could die.
I remember you saying, in 6 months' time, you were going to be dead in prison or in a lunatic asylum. Yeah. I remember hearing that and thinking, fucking hell, that sounds heavy.
However, it was in 2000 when things began to turn around for Russell Brand. On the 2nd of February 2000, Russell performed his first stand-up at the Hackney Empire New Act of the Year. Whilst not winning the event, onlookers started to recognise his talent and were convinced of his potential. It was at this exact moment when Russell's career would begin to snowball, but no one could have predicted as to what was coming next.
When it said ladies on the door, I thought it just said, ladies, would you like a lady? Would you like to touch one? Sniff one round the tops of her legs? Wee nearer?
In 2001, Russell Brand briefly worked for MTV as a video journalist. Although, like his school days, it wouldn't take long for him to be expelled from the company. Russell's departure came after arriving at work high and dressed as Osama bin Laden just one day after the 9/11 attacks. Not to mention he brought his drug dealer to work.
Dressing up as Osama bin Laden on September the 12th, 2001. Of all the choices of fancy dress you could ever choose on such a date, I would actually.
How old is this? It came out this year.
It was becoming clear that with Russell's growing fame was a very serious drug problem.
Oh, wait, you got fired from MTV, right? You were the first person that got fired, I think, from MTV. How did that happen?
When I was a crack and heroin addict, I made some unusual decisions. They included dressing in an inappropriate way on September the 11th. Now, before I talk about this, remember, I was on crack and heroin, Chelsea, and I challenge any of you to take crack and heroin and see how it affects your personal, private and professional life.
However, this was only the start. In 2002, Russell attended the May protest for workers' pay, ostensibly to protest, but really just for another excuse to be smashed on heroin and crack. The brewing concoction of ego-boosting fame, crack and far-left beliefs rendered Russell Brand naked in the middle of London's Piccadilly Circus.
During the 2002 May Day protests, did you strip naked in Piccadilly Circus?
Yeah, that was a mistake.
Just to convert, is Matt Binder the second guest? No, Rod Webber. He's the filmmaker. He's the one who exposed Jimmy Dore for his Boogaloo Boys segment. He's the one who like interviewed Jimmy Dore and was like, "Do you know who the Boogaloo Boys are?" And Jimmy Dore was like, "No." And he's like, "Well, shouldn't you have researched who they were before you brought one on and told everyone we should align with them?" And then Jimmy never posted it, and then he ended up posting that guy. Yeah. And the same one who also was at the Trump rally and read the Bible quote to Trump, the one that got everyone really mad, that went viral. Because it was the quote about like being greedy and stuff like that. Yeah, Rod Webber. And he's got a cool movie out too.
You've got to know, Piers, I was taking, you must know this for a number of reasons. I was on, then remember I was a drug addict. Now I'm not using it as an excuse for everything, I'm just using it as an excuse for this. I was on a lot of drugs, I wasn't thinking straight, I was showing off. Like, they make you go daft, crack, heroin, you make terrible decisions. And I was showing off in the middle of Piccadilly Circus by the Statue of Eros, took my trousers and pants down all in front of the police.
This was the second turning point in Russell's life, with this humiliating scene serving as one of the main catalysts for Russell's eventual recovery. As shortly after this instance, Russell's sobriety was instigated by his agent John Noel, after he was caught using heroin in a bathroom during a Christmas party.
It was your Christmas party and I was using gear in the toilet. I was over the foil and everything. What's that, mate? Oh, fucking hell, is that heroin? You got a bit of a problem, haven't you? Do you know what I mean?
A bit of a roundabout.
A year after going to rehab, Russell was able to land a job presenting on a show called Big Brother's Big Mouth, a sideshow of the UK hit Big Brother.
I believe it were Churchill that goad. It's a riddle wrapped in a mystery inside an enigma.
With a new job and newfound sobriety, Russell's path to fame began to soar. His stand-up tours were sellouts, and by 2007, Russell used his experience in comedy to run his own TV show, Ponderland.
Hello, hi, yeah, welcome, thank you.
The show proved to be a huge hit with the viewers, boosting his popularity tremendously. With his show taking off, accolades pouring in, and being crowned Shagger of the Year, it's safe to say that Russell well and truly had his hands filled.
Where do you get that award? I'm not British. I didn't even know you had one. It's just Shagger of the Year. How do you apply? Is there a number requirement? Is it how many people you shag, or is it the quality of the shag? It's probably the quality over the quantity. I would imagine so. I'm not entirely well. Anyways, British people, let me know.
He was having sex with 5 or 6 women a day.
It was
a day
belt of kind of faceless name.
Yeah, those are some numbers. Five women a day. My word, man.
Bodies.
Shagger of the Year.
Yes, one of my proudest accolades is that I am the shagger of some years.
However, it was in 2008 when everything would change for Russell.
Hello there, you little sex object. I've lost a shoe.
In 2008, Russell gained his major breakthrough in the film Forgetting Sarah Marshall, essentially turning the name Russell Brand into a household name, with this newfound fame granting Russell access into the Hollywood elite, getting key roles in films like Despicable Me, Get Into the Greek, The Tempest and Hop.
It's all over the news. Some fella just stole a pyramid. They're saying he makes all other villains look lame.
And in the comedy world, Russell was performing sold-out shows and found himself on his own Comedy Central stand-up special.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Russell Brand.
With his career flying high and his addictions behind him, the final piece of the jigsaw fell into place when he married the love of his life, Katy Perry. Russell's newfound ascension into the Hollywood bubble would be a pivotal point in molding Russell's political views, because, like anyone in Hollywood, you have to conform.
Easy if you try.
You always have to say the right things, you have to be as sanitized as possible, and of course, you have to virtue signal.
I think a socialist egalitarian system based on the massive redistribution of wealth, I think the very concept of profit should be hugely reduced. David Cameron says profit isn't a dirty word. I say profit is a filthy word.
With his newfound fame and his presenting experiences, Russell would star in his own late-night talk show, Brand X. The show featured a segment called Totally Unacceptable Opinion, which would feature people from groups like the Westboro Baptist Church who would debate Russell.
Steve Drain and Timothy Phelps of the Westboro Baptist Church. It's a type of religion. Don't be mean, don't be mean. Which one are you, mate? Steve, sit down, bruv. Which one are you?
Timothy.
Hello, Timothy.
Brand X, however, was cancelled after 2 seasons, although the show was Russell's first exercise on riffing on the news and bringing his political and philosophical arguments to the mainstream. Yet, this life Russell had stumbled on was beginning to take a nasty toll on his psyche. The world of being a Hollywood star, with all its virtue signalling, emptiness and vacuousness, was becoming too toxic. Russell was beginning to realise that the intoxicating world of stardom wasn't a healthy place to be trapped inside.
I thought it would be good to be rich and famous. It would be good to be the opposite of this. It would be good to have stuff. It'd be good to have money. It'd be good to be invited to the party. Well, I've been invited. I've been in. We're having this chat in a private Swish members club in East London. It's super cool. There's bare brick walls. Everyone's double good looking. But I've been inside now. I've seen the other side of the looking glass. It ain't fucking worth it. It's not good. It don't feed your soul. I still feel empty inside.
This was the third pivotal moment in Russell's journey. With the dawning realization that his dreams weren't all they lived up to be, it wouldn't take long for Russell's world to fall apart. After 14 months of marriage, Russell Brand and Katy Perry would divorce. Russell's acting roles began to decline, and his presence in the entertainment industry was beginning to nosedive.
You got divorced at the weekend. When I spoke to you last time, you were very happily married, and you were talking as if this was going to be it. How do you feel now that you're officially a single man again?
Russell's life of glitz and glamour was falling apart. It quickly became apparent that Russell would need to divorce himself from the Hollywood lifestyle and reevaluate his path. The lifeline sustaining Russell's journey up until now had evaporated. Fame, drugs, one-night stands, all of it meaningless and toxic. There was only one thing left for Russell: politics. But it's important I give some context of the time. In 2011, the world was becoming a very different place. The 2008 financial crash had left a nasty stain on the economy and society.
The stock market is now down 21%.
Because we're now down 43%.
On the NASDAQ, everything and more has been completely wiped out.
It was the worst day on Wall Street since the crash of 1987.
Linked with this was a migrant crisis in Europe and Arab Spring riots in the East.
Reports of explosions.
Clashes between rioters and security forces.
Society was changing and so was Russell, with Russell's obsession with Hollywood and the entertainment industry dwindling. It was time for him to enter the political arena. Following the overdose of long-term friend Amy Winehouse, Russell would begin spreading awareness of drug addiction. Most notably in 2012, Russell Brand testified to the Home Affairs Committee about government drug policy.
Need to offer them treatment, not simply out of some airy-fairy that's all old hands and hug liberalism, but because it deals with the problem and it prevents further crimes being committed. Addicts that get clean at one day at a time through abstinence-based recovery generally...
Cervantes, Lance did say that Russell was the largest political YouTuber. That's what the video said. I didn't know that until now. I mean, like, let's look at that. We can find out via the science. So Russell Brand has 4.72 million subscribers. I like how he's like, he gave up all the fame and fortune to be a political YouTuber like a sacrifice. If you have 4.72 million subscribers, you are making bank. You are making a ton of bank. What are you talking about? You still have fame and fortune. Well, I guess, what's Steven Crowder at? Steven Crowder is 5.57. Uh-oh, we've already debunked this video. And it was the first attempt. Look at that. Steven Crowder, 5.57 to Russell Brand's 4.72. You got debunked in real time. I am more accurate than this video is. Hell yeah.
Speaking, stop committing crimes. That's better for victims, it's better for the addict, it's better for society.
The testimony would bring Russell his biggest critic of all, the well-articulated straight edge,
even more lefty disinfo,
Peter Hitchens. This divide between Russell
I don't think this channel is lefty. I just put it on because it was the history of Russell Brand, and I've been saying Russell Brand has kind of gotten a pass for a while. I don't know if it's going to go hard on him. That's where you'll need our commentary chat to come in. But like, his channel, let's go back to Russell Brand's channel for 1 second. It's not all bad, okay? Like any political channel, there's a few videos where you'll probably find things that you might agree on. It's that he doesn't really have... a lot of it is a combination of spiritual woo fused with some anti-capitalist sentiments, but never from a position or a perspective of, like, you know, analyzing it theoretically. It's almost always kind of like big pharma bad, here's how they manipulate you, here's how they control you kind of stuff. Like... rage rise and bashing the unvaxxed. That's insane. We should just stop working. Lab leak cover up. Damning new Fauci email. Or what? COVID passport microchip. They're inserting COVID passport microchips. Thought politics was corrupt. Watch this next. Hang on, we've all been conned by January 6th. It was all a lie. It never happened. Boris Johnson's number 10 parties, shorts. What a fucking liar. Boris bombshell leaked. See, so this one, first one of all these that I'd probably be like, oh yeah. Joe Rogan destroys MSM as Jon Stewart slams. Piss off the unvaccinated. Wait, what the fuck? Okay, I'm just kind of curious to watch a handful of these now.
Can you envisage a world where you did not have to work, where you lived in comfort and luxury and freedom? Of course you can't, no one's offering that, but it's possible. That's what we're talking about today.
So you're like, oh, you're going to talk about communism? Is that it?
No one's saying, do you know we can remold the world however we want to? In fact, this kind of dystopia we're marching towards, is somebody's vision. It's the vision.
Didn't have to work to survive, then the whole price of work would change, because labor that, you know, like taking care of autistic kids or, you know, working in a hospice, like, you know, people who do that work should get paid, you know, very, very well. You know, and that would be the case if everybody had a basic income.
That's cool, Daniel. That's cool, because like if you think about it all.
See, like universal basic income. All right, sign me up. This is interesting.
Jon Stewart has called the legacy media disgusting, and Joe Rogan has proven that individual broadcasters can become more powerful than the biggest blue church propagandist organizations. What does this mean for old media versus new possibilities for truth? Million glorious incarnations of the limitless oneness temporarily held here in form before once again rejoining.
He's weird every day.
While we're here.
You just need a system, you know? My experience with friends who are weird and eccentric, because I have quite a few, is you just need to develop a system, you know? Whereas like some people you might be like, oh, you could call them or text them. They'll get back to you. It's like, no. I need to send a pigeon 1 week in advance, and then that homing pigeon has to reach a certain individual, a druid, if you will. That druid is going to start a cauldron, who will then relay the meal that he forms into someone who will start the fire, and the smoke from that fire will send the signal on yonder, which again will be picked up, and then he will see it from a distance and be like, oh shit, I should pick up my phone. I guess Rod is calling me. Oh, there it is. Yeah, okay. And then the whole thing works, right? He's got a whole staff.
Let us embark together on a journey of powerful truth, including where possible every old camp Semitic agenda. Now, J.K. Rowling, she copped a lot of flack. That's fake. kind of mucking around. Now, Newsweek reported that as being Jon Stewart calls J.K. Rowling anti-Semitic. You can see that the model that's being used there is, what is the worst we could make this? How could we inflate this? How could we conflate this? How could we get two figures and turn them against one another, even though that's not what's being said? Because if you think about it, J.K. Rowling wrote a book, then films were made about that book, then characters and puppets were designed, and all sorts of things happened, and mask and latex and prosthetics. It's not like J.K. Rowling.
You know, it's like at no point was anyone like, oh, it's not a fucking good idea to do that one there. Yeah, no, we shouldn't be going with that one. I don't agree. I don't agree. Don't do the fucking anti-Semitic goblins. Don't do that one. Please. Is J.K. Rowling on the set? So, oh, hello, it's lovely to be here on the set of Harry Potter. Oh, are those the goblins then? No, perfect. No, they look exactly as I envisioned them. No, I often said I wanted the goblins to be unique, special, if you will. Just so people recognize them in the real world. All right, then, we got them goblins. Maybe add a little Star of David at the bottom there. Little Star of David, just at the bottom. You get that Star of David in metal. Yeah, now we got that. Yeah, it's going to look fucking perfect, that one. Oh, lovely.
Here's my anti-Semitic agenda. Now, J.K. Rowling, she cops a lot of flack. Let's face it, in all sorts of places and territories that I do not feel qualified or inclined to wander into.
Don't want to talk about your trans issue. No, not inclined, as it were. You know, not to touch that one there. It's just a wee bit little difficult, that one. Got to watch what you say. No, not inclined.
But what you can say for certain is that there are platforms that enjoy creating conflagration and conflict unnecessarily. When you look at the world at the moment,
conflagration and conflict, it's true.
Do you think what we need now is more opportunities for us to start hating one another, for people to in fact construct opportunities for arguments when really there weren't one? Because I don't. I think the exact opposite. Now, is there a connection between this story and this distrust and...
You gotta understand then, Russell, you can take a step back. I know there's areas of which you do not want to enter for inexplicable reasons. No one will ever know why, but I'm sure there's a point where you can look at this and be like, hey, by the way, she's kind of writing a book that marginalizes a community pretty heavily. She's got a very large platform. This is already a community that's pretty marginalized in the UK, so to have one of the most famous authors, living authors anyway, of you know, this era come forward and say things that are definitely going to make people's lives much, much worse. Well, I don't know if that's actually just live and let live kind of shit, you know. It's not really like, oh, well, you know, she's being nice and friendly, so why can't everyone else?
And the growing power of Joe Rogan and figures like him, although let's accept that Joe Rogan is a unique outlier with a unique set of criteria and assets, but surely his success in part is due to his transparency and authenticity. Let's have a look at this whole issue. Former US talk show host Jon Stewart says comments he made about the Harry Potter films were meant to be light-hearted, and he was not accusing author J.K. Rowling of anti-Semitism.
Yeah, I remember all this. He was going after the costume designers, that kind of stuff.
Your business model is fucking arson. And not the good kind, not the good kind of arson where they light stuff and control it to prevent forest fires in the future. The kind of arson where you're on the mountain and you've got fucking 5 minutes and you don't know where the dogs are. Like
that's weird for you to take this clip and then associate it with the other one. Like you're kind of doing a selective editing there. So anyways, I guess this proves my point. Like Russell Brand, it's a mixed bag. Like you can go to the channel and there will be some videos in which you're like, okay, I kind of agree with this. He's interviewing someone about universal basic income. This is a good thing. Neat. And then there's another 3 or 4 about vaccine lies, vaccine hysteria, passports, microchips are putting inside you. But then there's the rich elites are controlling you. But then I'm going to interview Jordan Peterson. What?
Have you ever wondered how
time the interview started, I was also
why are the people that you platform, Jordan Peterson, Tim Pool, like people are going to start to think that you've got an agenda, Russell, and that it's very selectively curated, one would think.
Extremely tired at the time, and so I was much more defensive than I could have been optimally. And so, and you know, that was partly also because in an interview like that, part of what's hoped for, I suppose, is that the person being so grilled will slip up in some, you know, remark.
Oh God, they're talking about cancel culture. Yeah.
would begin to crystallize in the following months, with the issue of drug addiction.
Lancemaker, hey, your name speaks to me. Is it possible to act if your actions were universal rule? That's too Kantian for me. I'm not talking about that. Kantian, I'm not Kantian. God, no. No, we're a combination of different things. I'd say fluid utilitarianism, all the way, baby. He just talks to people, everyone. It should be no problem with Peterson and Tim Pool. Look, there's no problem with just asking questions. There's no problem with just interviewing a few people. I mean, if Tim Pool and Jordan Peterson want to come on my show at the same time, I would love to have them both. We'll have a very fruitful conversation. It'll be lovely. I'm just saying that if you have a selective amount of people that you bring onto your show, you'll probably wind up with the same accusations that Joe Rogan got. Now, Joe Rogan does bring on other people, other figures. He does. But I'll show you how the math works on this one. I made a documentary on this. This is my topic. You're talking about my jam, sir. Lancemaker. Allow me to make you. Oh, it's gonna have to be an old school one. Let's scroll through all the way to the old catalog. Where's the second one? Oh, wow, this is old. The beta battle. Hey, if you haven't watched the beta battle, that's my Jesse Lee Peterson debate. Really good. Joe Rogan 2, the Alex Jones Parabellum. There we go. Now let's get to the numbers. Because we did the math, okay? We figured it all out. Look at this. I did math.
No, not the poopy ones written by Kakapoople. The ones that were at least attempting to be in good faith. The most frequent being some form of, Joe Rogan has a diverse selection of guests on his show, and you've just been cherry-picking the conservative ones. So, looking at the direct data of his podcast for the past 400 episodes since 2016, Election Day, Joe Rogan has featured prominent left-wing guests Kyle Kulinski and Abby Martin twice on his show. They are the only two left-wing guests who have been invited twice. Jimmy Dore could be considered a third, however he also hovers in the conspiracy theory territory and is presented as a comedian. Conversely, in the same period, Joe Rogan had Jordan Peterson on 6 times, Brett Weinstein on 4 times, Sam Harris on 3 times, Dave Rubin on twice, Tim Pool twice, Gad Saad twice, Alex Jones twice, Steven Crowder twice, and Michael Malice twice. Not to mention, he also featured Candace Owens, Ted Nugent, Roseanne Barr, Douglas Murray, Peter Boghossian, Sargon Ricard, Scott Adams, Ben Shapiro, and Gavin McInnes.
So these are gays.
Oh, I'm not gonna let him speak. That's too much Gavin McInnes. You're gross. I'm just saying that, like, yeah, it really shows your hand when the guests that you're interviewing usually happen to fall into the intellectual dark web. Or weeb, sorry, I should say that.
At the forefront of their tensions.
I'd like to ask the alleged comedian in the hat whether
Filet Fignon said, I got into leftist politics because I saw Kyle on Joe Rogan. That's awesome. That's great news. That's really cool to hear. That's one of the reasons why Joe Rogan should have people, you know, on the left on his show more often. I would agree with that.
Well, we've had a lot of him, and far too much for me. Deal with a person who cannot debate seriously. Why is this person brought before select committees and allowed to make programs on the BBC? He simply
Peter Hitchens
isn't capable of doing it.
It was becoming clear that Russell's focus was shifting away from acting, stand-up, and
Peter Hitchens is the worst Hitchens. It's Christopher all the way, baby.
Presenting to campaigning, debates, and political writing.
And even Christopher Hitchens is problematic in his own way.
I've got money now. I've seen rich people. There's plenty of money out there. It's just not being distributed.
Notably, in October 2013, Russell became the guest editor of the left-wing magazine, The New Statesman. He would use his position as editor to dedicate part of the magazine to the notion of revolution. As he wrote in the issue's editorial, imagining the overthrow of the current political system is the only way I can be enthused about politics. Following these statements, Russell would go viral after his interview with Jeremy Paxman.
Jeremy, don't ask me to sit here in an interview with you in a bloody hotel room and devise a global utopian system. I'm merely pointing out that
You're calling for revolution?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you see any hope?
Remember that? Yeah, totally. There's going to be a revolution. It's totally going to happen. I said, not only I ain't got a flicker of doubt. This is the end.
In a response to the interview,
he was an asshole, but he was a righteous
released
asshole.
his book
Yeah.
Revolution in 2014. In the book, Russell argued contemporary capitalism is unequal and unfair. Russell claimed contemporary democracy is a sham, with Russell instead advocating for a social revolution based on 2 principles. 1, non-violence, and 2, the radical improvement of the quality of life for ordinary people. However, the book was really just...
By the way, that was around the time when I started becoming interested in Russell Brand from a leftist perspective. I was like, oh, neat. Is this going to be one of those pivots where it was someone who's incredibly famous, was just like a very in-your-face celebrity kind of A-lister guy who has gone into, like, has he been reading theory? What's going on behind the scenes?
These trite, vague messages of changing the world through love, compassion, and unity, which is why it gained a mixed reception. And to be honest, in this part of Russell's journey, I had a very negative opinion of him. I saw him at the time as another rich celebrity from Hollywood.
I think he doesn't want to talk to left-wingers. I don't know. I don't know why he's doing everything he's doing in such a bubble. Because like you must know, okay, he's certainly self-aware. That's why when he was talking about J.K. Rowling, he's like, now there's obviously some issues some people might have and find her contentious in an arena of something that I do not want to travel in, or like I don't want to talk about it. I'm talking about, of course, the trans issue. Fine. So he's self-aware in that respect. But like, if you bring Tim Pool on your show, if you bring Jordan Peterson on your show, if you bring Brett Weinstein on your show, like you are curating a certain kind of crowd. Or you might feel like the only justifiable thing you could say there is that he knows he's got kind of a right-leaning crowd and he's trying to pull them further to the left. That's just like his noble pursuit or something of that.
Telling the public that we need to redistribute the wealth, all whilst living in gated mansions and gated communities. And I really wasn't the only one who thought this.
Stand for Parliament. If you're going to campaign, then stand.
I stand for Parliament, but I'd be scared that I'd become one of them. I know what side of the argument.
No, I'm sorry. He's full addiction.
In a 2014 YouGov poll, Russell Brand was chosen as one of the most negative influences on political debate. The poll found that 60% of poll participants disliked him, so shortly afterwards, Russell...
Checkered Square says, I think Joe Rogan is afraid of being challenged. I think left-wing people would do that more. I mean, the only thing that makes me push back against that is that his conversation with Bernie Sanders and Cornel West, both of those are really good. Like, I feel like he's sitting there learning, and then all of a sudden he'll have on another guest, and I'll be like, oh my god, this is absolute fucking hot fire. Why are we doing this?
Would appear on BBC Newsnight to renew his popularity, but this would end up making everything worse.
150 years.
Do you ever go
and it's
outside?
terrible. Just look at the right-hand side. I'm on your side here. Look, on the right-hand side. Look how far it goes down.
Sure.
Go back over the previous bits, though.
Don't talk to me like that, mate. It's
Wages have been going up.
In
In the book, you refer to the destruction of the Twin Towers in New York, 9/11, as what some people say looked like a controlled explosion. And one might read that as you giving some credence to conspiracy theories.
You can read the book in whatever manner you would like to.
Do you believe that the Twin Towers were destroyed by forces of the American government or similar?
I think it's interesting that at this time where we have so little trust in our political figures, where ordinary people have so little trust in their media, that we have to remain open-minded to any kind of possibility. I don't know. I think you're correct. Do you trust?
Lancemaker says, I watch a lot of Joe Rogan. I'm a right-winger myself. On his podcast, he tried to understand how the other party thinks, and to do the same is to become kind of passive. If you have a lot of discordances with the person and become problematic because there would be conflict eventually. I watch some of his podcasts in my own country that the people invite people on to think the opposite, and I find it fun, but the majority of people don't like it. You mean the majority of his fan base doesn't like having Joe Rogan be like pushed back against? Is that the idea? Like, I think it would be of great benefit if Joe left the intellectual dark web bubble for a while, if he actually started having on a variety of different guests, because again, I think some of his best episodes are people like Cornel West or people like Bernie Sanders when they're on, and that's just not me coming from a strictly lefty perspective. I don't think when he has, like, when he brought on Ben Shapiro back in the day, he didn't push back against him a lot. And now he pushes back against him a little bit more when he brings him on. He's like, well, I'm not just going to let you come on and say whatever you want. I mean, maybe the best moments of Joe Rogan were when he finally realized Dave Rubin was a grifter and actually started calling Dave Rubin out, or when he realized that Steven Crowder was a grifter and started calling Steven Crowder out.
The American government? Do you trust the British government?
Following this, the media would be quick to call Russell a conspiracy theorist, making Russell unpopular in both.
Chicken Square says, but both Sanders and West have decades of experience telling people those ideas in easy words. True. I that is a good point. Like, to be a good communicator like Bernie Sanders is, you really do have to be able to, like, take very complex ideas and just, like, you know, synergize them into a single phrase, because everyone can get on board with, like, you know, there's the 1% and the 99%.
The right and now the left. But there was one thing that stood out with Russell Brand. He was touching on something unspoken, most notably the pointlessness of voting for unrepresentative leaders.
Which is, you don't think people should do it.
Every election in American history has been won by the party that has the most money to campaign with. Every single election. That means don't bother to have the election, just ask which one of you two's got the most money. The person puts their hand out, go, you could be in charge then, because that is what happens anyway.
Right.
With an increasing presence in the political sphere, Russell would launch his first YouTube series in 2014.
the truths.
Russell's aim with the channel was to analyse the news and assess the greatest risks to personal freedom. The show propelled his YouTube following, gaining Russell renewed popularity in the political world, most famously for his criticisms of Fox News.
Americans have shed enough blood there. My resolution? Airstrikes. Bomb them. Bomb them, keep bombing them, bomb them again and again.
Fucking hell, Justice Justine. Bomb them. She's pointing everything. Bomb them. When they do these bombings, it creates more insurgents. That's what creates them. Don't think of the bomb
that's true.
That's going down there and destroying stuff. Think of it as like a seed that goes into the ground and grows insurgents out of it.
The back and forth beef between Fox News anchors and Russell would further polarize Brand from the right.
Welcome back to Hannity. All right, yesterday, Russell Brand, a D-list actor, better known for his failed marriage to Katy Perry, recorded himself going on a 12.5-minute tirade against little...
It's fucking snowflakes. All of a sudden, it's like, oh, well, he's a D-list actor, obviously, coming after us on a YouTube video. Let's take him down. Here we go, full power of the Fox News.
Me. Russell, if you're watching, and I'm sure you will, take a close look at your TV because I need to educate you because you're kind of dumb and ignorant.
In addition to his news analysis on YouTube, Russell began having guests on the show. However, this YouTube channel was a very different place to what we see today, with the guests and topics really just targeting what didn't fit into the leftist narrative. By the end of the year, more than 200 episodes have been released on the channel, boosting Russell's presence as a leftist political commentator. However, Russell's hypocrisy would emerge again in 2015. Having been a strong advocate for not voting,
Russell Brand is one of the people who said in the past that he doesn't think people should bother to vote.
Russell would suddenly change his tune and proclaim to the public that they needed to vote for the Labour Party. All of this came when Brand published an interview with Labour leader Ed Miliband on the Truths.
We know that Ed Miliband, under cover of night, went to see Russell Brand. The Tories have reacted already, and David Cameron said, Russell Brand is a joke.
Russell Brand's a joke.
And yet, in the 2015 election, Russell was never registered to vote. It was these sorts of hypocrisies that would crush his popularity. And by 2015, in the face of declining public approval, Russell cancelled his YouTube show, where he would release the final episode of The Truths, titled Final Episode of The Truths. Goodbye, good luck.
To be continued. To be continued. We started with a bad pun. We ruined the general election. Russell Brand's a joke. We antagonised Fox News.
Scruff bucket, Russell Brand.
We brought about change. We brought new conversations to the table. But we will be ending on a bad pun. To be continued. Don't unsubscribe here. Goodbye for now.
So now the question...
Yeah, that's about where I was at until like a couple months ago. Maybe like 6 months ago when I was just randomly going through videos and then being like, oh, I recommended a video by Russell Brand. Oh, wow, he's got a new... Is this a new channel? It looks really popular. He's got a lot of videos and they're all very, very anti-vaxxy. It seems like a super anti-vaxxy channel. Interesting.
What do you do from here? Having had all the fame, sex, drugs, money, attention, and now facing growing hatred from the public, what was left for Russell Brand? Russell needed a break from the crazy world of politics and entertainment to answer these exact questions. What mattered in his life? Why was Russell losing popularity? How could Russell Brand find out what his true beliefs actually were? So Russell used the time to settle down and put his life in perspective once again, and it was in these years where Russell's journey would change the most, creating the Russell Brand we see today.
I've meditated every day. This is what has happened. I've started doing videos on how I've meditated every day. But more importantly than that, probably, is that my assumption of who I am has been challenged because I have a daily experience of consciousness that is distinct from my individual sense of myself.
Throughout Russell's life, there had always been signs that Russell would delve headfirst into spirituality. From meeting the Dalai Lama,
every white pointer in London,
talking about the Hare Krishna movement, and through daily transcendental meditation, it was always a part of Russell. But it was only from coming out of the limelight and re-evaluating his values and political positions would we see a new side to Russell Brand.
I don't look at porn, I don't objectify people, I'm in a monogamous relationship. I know I can't get anything by cheating people, in the sense of like trying to get something from people.
From here, Russell would start a family and move out into the countryside away from the momentum of being in the limelight. Through grounding himself with children, reading, and living away from the facade of entertainment, Russell's mind would begin to open. Rather than just involving himself in heated debates on live television, Russell would instead turn to discussions with figures from all sides of the political equation. And so in 2017, Russell would rejuvenate his YouTube...
That was a weird thing. It's like all sides of the political equation. It was Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro. They're kind of on the same side.
channel and begin his podcast Under the Skin. The podcast's early days would consist of academics and scholars to discuss topics such as, can we really stop terror? Why are you who you are? And Shakespeare and power. But over time, these podcasts would evolve to host a wide range of guests and topics, discussing the culture war with Jordan Peterson, tech power, manipulation, conspiracies with Edward Snowden, and populism with Candace Owens. These experiences showed the other side of the coin to Russell. Russell would still retain his beliefs in the problems of big tech, big government, and media manipulation, but his left-right paradigm would dissolve in place of finding truth without partisanship.
In my podcast Under the Skin, I've had guests that are from what you would...
So he became the enlightened centrist. That's the point of all this. He became he is the one true enlightened centrist, and no one actually has the enlightened part of it. Like, a lot of people are just centrists, and they're like, yes, well, perfectly balanced as all things can be. But no, it's as all things should be. And there's no enlightenment behind it. You're not meditating every day, so you cannot add that part. You need the woo, and then it combines to create perfect centrism. My word.
Call the right, guests from what you would call the left, guests with out there views in a sort of a spiritual sense, atheistic and materialistic views, scientists, spiritual folk, because I'm interested in truth.
It was this transformation to a family-centered, curious and calm Russell Brand that would make Russell the fastest growing political commentator on YouTube. However, from 2017 to 2020, most of Russell's channel was focused on spirituality and self-help, with videos on meditating, depression, anxiety, loneliness, relationships and yoga. It was only until late 2020 when Russell would begin to give his opinion on the political world. Having separated from party politics, Russell's perspective was fresh in a world defined by identity politics. The first major sign of this was in December 3rd, 2020. When Russell released a video titled COVID Vaccine, Skepticism or Trust. It was a video that showed the open-minded approach Russell now had to the current political situation we're in today.
New ideas are being leveraged on the basis of public health and safety that certainly seem to have another component due to some of the partners that are involved, notably Pfizer, and at a time where people are concerned as well as about their health, about individual liberty and the impediment on individual liberty imposed by government organisations aided and abetted by corporations, it seems it's concerning.
With no Hollywood elite molding his views, no addictions, no public pressure, Russell was able to provide a balanced view on the vaccine, a feat no one in the media or YouTube could ever do, for fears of being cancelled or silenced by big tech or their bosses. The video would eventually blow up, getting 10 times the viewership of Russell's usual videos. And then in 2021, in the aftermath of the Capitol Hill riots, Russell, a man who in the past was quick to call
That's wild. So it's one of those cases of where, you know how it's who shapes whom, right? Is it the audience that shapes the viewer, or is it the viewer that shapes the audience? And in this case, it's kind of like a symbiotic relationship. We've got Russell Brand producing all these videos. Now he's starting to go into a topic that he didn't talk about frequently, but that topic blows up and becomes a very important part of now his discourse. And so now he's going to create more videos upon that topic and then move that towards the January 6th event.
Voters bigots was now voicing the concerns of Capitol Hill rioters, giving their perspective a chance to be heard in the face of untold scrutiny from the mainstream media, academics and Washington establishment.
What I'm saying is that what is interesting about these disturbances, about this disruption, is that during the last few months, we have seen a continuation of increasing inequality.
So I'm going to disagree with this author's thesis because it's called The Radical Overhaul of Russell Brand. I wouldn't say that he became more radical. I would say that he became less radical and he became more aligned towards the center of this argument. So now his channel effectively does a couple things. It speaks about the similar populism that you will have people like Tucker Carlson talk about, where there is, of course, the elites or the rich few who control a lot of the decision making in society, although that usually is a bit more of an ambiguous statement than actually targeting different sectors or specific individuals or specific companies, right? It's more just that there's a wealthy class of elites that control everything that we do see here. And then you combine that with vaccine hesitancy, a little bit of vaccine fear, mixed in for good measure. And then perhaps even some kind of like new age UBI stuff as well, a little Andrew Yang, just to round everything out, again, to soften the sides, to shape it.
It is likely, given the architecture of the Biden government, that most people, regardless of their colour or their class, will not see significant change in their quality of life. So I suppose my ultimate conclusion is this: if you want to be free of this kind of behaviour, then we have to contribute to the creation of conditions that help us to be free of it.
Russell would...
I mean, I don't know if his ultimate goal is to pull people from the right closer to maybe his worldview, because like he's not fundamentally wrong if he says like the conditions that are going to create either the insurgents or the need for the insurgents or the insurrection on January 6th, or just Donald Trump in general, come from gross inequality. Like if people's material conditions are not met, then yes, they will turn towards things like fascism. Like that is historically how that stuff works, right? The economic conditions have to predate the rise of someone who's going to be able to scapegoat and otherize a group in order to justify a lot of their own, militaristic ambitions. But that's not in and of itself. I'm going to, like, from what I've seen in Russell Brand, it's not just that. Like, if that was the core of his messaging, or maybe that's part of his messaging, and then some of the other bits are going to get lost along the road on his path towards getting there.
Continue making these videos, highlighting the deception and Mickey Mouse levels of government control the World Economic Forum proposed.
Davos Week, the Great Reset. You will own nothing.
See, that kind of stuff. Like, when it gets into this idea that, like, there is, again, these elites that are meeting specifically to control us all through something known as the Great Reset, and they're gonna, like... My problem with people who say focus or hyper-focus on like a freedom of speech angle or a tech bro angle or like just a tech monopoly trying to control everything we do or say and then add the government side of things, like we give away so much of that for free. People, I think, are sometimes unaware of all the time that we spend online on Facebook, Twitter, all that kind of Google, where they are monitoring and keeping track of our patterns, you know, not specifically in order to just like know what each individual's doing at all times because they care about every single thought that you have, but more just to make a profit because that information is going to be very, very valuable if they sell it to third parties. And we willingly give them that kind of information on a regular basis and then scream asunder when suddenly we think that they're censoring us, right? Like this big tech company is censoring free speech because they went after one of my heroes specifically. It's like, well, it's not exactly free speech in the way you think it is. We've been actually willingly participating in this combination of a social experiment with the profitability of what our social interactions are. So tech companies do that. And the fact that we're just calling it out now is kind of scary, right? And the fact that you're trying to combine that with this idea that is it the big government watching us or is it a big tech watching us, right? Well, you kind of overlook what is actually causing a lot of these inequalities, if you will.
And you will be happy. Why do we keep hearing this phrase?
In addition to highlighting the hypocrisy of billionaires promoting lockdowns while secretly buying up untold acres of farming land.
Bill Gates is now the largest farmland owner in the United States.
See, that's a good thing to bring up.
Bill Gates become a kind of tech old McDonald. Let's investigate it and work out, is he simply pursuing a plan to help people or could there be another explanation?
These videos continue to blow up, gaining millions of views and boosting Russell's presence as a political commentator. From here, Russell would make videos on the vaccine makers' role in the opioid.
Yeah, because these things are again, they're internet gold. Like the internet loves this kind of shit. Like Jimmy Dore, look no further than him. He realized there was a gold mine to be had. That's why his channel changed from being just purely anti-democratic, you know, content to being very, very anti-vax light content. And like, that's just look at his videos. Look at the majority of them. What is the topic?
Crisis. His experiences with Edward Snowden.
Then you get into the conspiracy left, unfortunately.
Protesting COVID laws. He would highlight the dangers of vaccine passports and the blatant hypocrisy of the Biden administration.
We already have vaccine passports. We've had vaccine passports for a very long time. If you travel to other countries, you may need to get vaccinated depending on what country you're going to, and you may need to show proof of vaccination. That's been a thing for a while now. That's not an entirely new concept.
In a matter of a few short years, Russell had gone from hating and dehumanizing media companies like Fox News to having quite a lot in common with them. From the problems of big tech, the lies behind COVID origins, the ramifications of vaccine passports, and the revolving backdoor between the White House and Wall Street.
Oh, so that's why the guy making this documentary likes it. He's like, so he came back to us, all right? He came back to the right, and we can be happy again.
Now, when I watch things on Fox, they seem to be talking about things I care about, breaking up big tech.
Today, Amazon, Google, and Facebook.
Oh, that sucks, because that's such a lie. And it's a lie that, like, you know, Tucker Carlson, with the help of people like Glenn Greenwald, obviously he can't do it on his own, but they've effectively sold people on this idea that, like, the person speaking truth to power is Tucker Carlson. He's the one who's calling out the rich elites. And I've shown, like, I've had to demonstrate so many times on my show, especially when, like, conservatives come in here thinking, or like Jimmy Dore fans too. They'll come in here. Thanks. Oh, Keffels, good to see ya. How you doing? Everyone, go check out Keffels' channel. They'll come in here and they'll be like, well, Lance, don't you understand that, like, Tucker Carlson talks about a lot of the same things as you? Like, he calls out the rich elites. He calls out the globalists and the corporations. Like, we don't talk about the same things. He's calling out very kind of scary ideas. Like, oh, the rich elites. Oh, the globalists. Yes, these sound like very... He's not specifically targeting either the system itself from, you know, the exploitation of labor, the surplus value that comes from people's labor that people from the smallest companies to the largest corporations have to take advantage of to become these billionaires. He's not talking about that concept. He just likes kind of like this nebulous rich elites and they're out there. Well, at the same time, he doesn't actually call out truth to power. Like, look at the example of when Donald Trump was in power and Donald Trump was pushing through something that was going to lower the corporate tax rate. That meant that corporate taxes were going to be lowered. Something that if you are speaking truth to power towards these corporations and these elitists, you would be front and center. That's something you should, like, alarm bells. Hey, Donald Trump, the president of the United States, is about to pass a tax bill that is going to lower the corporate tax rate. That should be 101. If you actually care about this issue, you will talk about it. And instead, he talked about racist trees. when that was happening. Racist trees in golf courses that were getting removed. That was his story during the Trump tax bill getting pushed. So he doesn't give two fucks about the corporate elites. He doesn't give two fucks about that. He's lying to you. It's all just a whole thing. Like where people are going to watch him and be like, oh wow, he cares about this. He cares about the common man. I like this Tucker Carlson guy. This, what is he? The heir to the Swanson fortune? Okay, cool. Yeah. Anyways, he calls out those rich elites. He knows what to say, right? He knows exactly how to call them out.
Look, also Apple aren't just richer and more powerful than the old monopolies or any companies that have ever existed throughout human history.
Ending monopolies.
There's nothing free about this market. A lot of these companies operate as monopolies.
Corruption in government and the relationship between government and big business.
They use government regulation to crush competition.
By finding equilibrium between the left and the right, Russell has now managed to become the fastest growing political commentator on YouTube.
I guess, yeah. I mean, if you're appealing to both sides, if you're appealing to people on like you're saying, like, hey, by the way, I don't take a position either way. Okay, I'm perfectly centrist on these issues. I'm going to be, like, again, like Sam Harris talked about, a very calm compass in this regard. Okay, I'm going to navigate these waters, these political waters, and we're going to find out what exactly is between both the left and the right the best possible solution to these problems that we find ourselves in. You're going to appeal to a very broad audience. You're going to get in a lot of people who are going to be like, well, you know what? He's not one of those wild lefties who's always talking and yelling about virtue signaling and stuff like that. And he's not one of those right-wing conservatives who's all fire and brimstone and saying about how, you know, trans bad and things like that. He's just perfectly centered, perfectly balanced in all things.
And in a way, it seems like Russell was the perfect candidate for this position. Who else has lived through all aspects of society in such an intense way? Who else could go from living in crack houses, to becoming a movie star, to being at the forefront of British politics, to speaking about the deep state on YouTube?
But real power lies with a deep state, inaccessible to the democratic process.
Yeah,
Meaning
the deep
that
state.
There's little point in voting, because whoever you vote for, you get the same deep state.
But it all comes back to the original question of this video. What caused this transformation? Well, from the start, Russell was always looking to experience something real. From being a drug and sex addict, to chasing fame, to becoming a movie star, to being a stand-up comedian, to debating politics, to protesting, campaigning, to wanting a revolution, to finding spirituality, meditation, to calling out the deep.
Now, I don't necessarily disagree with you here. No to Rav Gagai. That's the problem. Both sides have been demonizing each other while the government continues to secure more power control. There's no question that is true about the demonizing each other's side, all right? The right and the left constantly yelling at each other. I think every single person, and this, I point the finger at the right a lot for trying to turn everything into a culture war. So everything is about cancel culture, Dr. Seuss, Mr. Potato Head, trans bad, all that kind of stuff. They're really hyper, CRTs taught in schools, they're really super hyper focused on that. And I think on the other side of the aisle, if you are like a Democrat in the United States, they are a lot about what people accuse other people of, virtue signaling. There's a lot of posturing. Don't worry, the Liberals in Canada do it too. The Liberals in Canada are all about like, for every Canadian, it's important to know that we respect the rights of women everywhere. And then you're like, well, what about Indigenous women? Because there's thousands and thousands of murdered and missing Indigenous women, and you don't seem to investigate that at all. In fact, we're getting reports now that the RCMP have been responsible before for sexually assaulting Indigenous women. So like, what exactly is going on here? You don't actually care about this, but you like to posture. You like to put on the airs of like, we care about the common people. Well, nothing will fundamentally change at all. That's going to be the neoliberal way. And then on top of which, hopefully we can deregulate the market in the background. That kind of shit, right? So yeah, I understand why in the midst of all that, it kind of feels like people are screaming past each other while the people who are in power stay in power. Absolutely. Because there's not an actual challenge to the structures of power themselves. I've never had an answer for if I took both Matrix pills. Oh yeah, don't do that. Then you'll poop.
Russell has had first-hand experience of what he talks about. He has had the opportunity to live on both sides of the coin, as a poor, desperate and lonely man, to being a rich, famous and successful man. He's been in the Hollywood elite. He's dined with the billionaire class and spoken with the media moguls, which is why, unlike so many commentators in the media and YouTube, Russell has lived through what he preaches. Through his first-hand experience, Russell can see what is really important in life. This is why Russell has evolved in a way.
I feel like this person wants to start a church. I really feel like this is going to be like the church of Russell Brand or something to that effect. I don't know. I'm getting these vibes at the end of the day. Do you enjoy the Serfs but prefer not to have to use your eyeballs? Many are saying this. Well, we've got the solution for you. It's the Serf Times in podcast form. Available on most major podcasting networks now. If you enjoy it, please consider leaving a good review and feedback because it really helps the show out, apparently, and it's free. Just like the podcast.
To our gods, Xander Corvus and Peyton L. Just, we beseech thee to smite down our enemies. To our monarch, Tom Spiker, We are but your humble court jesters, here to amuse you. To our lords, Trevor R., we give thanks for this spit of land for us to eke out this meager existence. To our knights, Merid, Cheryl Alvarez, Ruby Kelly, Ellie Leslie, Alex P., Brandon, Words Greenwood, Nate, that one guy, Hagbird Celine, Matthew Scarborough, Stellar Vision, Ariane McCarthy, Daniel Sutton, Coulter Smith, Val 9000, Jenna Tall, Quiet 185, Anna Loves Riley, Omni, Riley and Anna, Poodlehawk, The Tim Caucus, Multi Mondi, Trevor Yanis, Lemmy 101, Anthropophojack, Cern 42, Catherine, Radical Maniac, Ramon Acosta, Nkosin, Violent Orchard, Sophie Baby, Political Puppy, Andreas Chiringuito, Zach Christensen, Josh Mickelson, Todd Buckingham, and Todd Lajeunesse. We raise our flag in a veil, and we salute you, our friends.